Today we're talking with Samantha Capaldi, who is also known as Samantha Sommelier. Sometimes I think people call her Sam the Somm.
Yep.
Sam,
Sam the Psalm, no snob Psalm, got a lot of nicknames these days.
excellent, excellent. Well, I'm so happy to be talking with you. And, I was thinking this morning about you, about your career, and about why any of us ever fall in love with wine. And why did you fall in love with wine?
That's a fun question. I actually got asked that recently, and I used to give different answers because I feel like there's a lot of reasons, right? And experiences and ways people fall in love with wine. But I think what really made me love it is when I got into it, I was really young. I was 22 and I'm 32 now, so it's been a decade. And I was really just scared and intimidated by everything I learned, being in, the wine industry at a young age and how people talked about it and kind of how I was looked at and treated, kind of like disregarded because oh, she's young, 22 sommelier, like, it's just you don't get a lot of street creds. I feel like and I just didn't like that. So I think what really made me fall in love with it was connecting with people that just genuinely loved wine and wanted to learn about it and talk about it with like no judgment. And as soon as I kind of like opened up myself and got more confident in the way that I talked about wine and shared it with people, I found my people. And I would say that's when my love for wine really just sparked and like took to the next level. It wasn't when I first decided to get into the industry. It was when I started connecting with people that were like me and wanted to just have fun and not take it so seriously and just be honest about things. And then I was like, I love it. I want to travel to every region possible, meet more people that want to share a glass and talk about it the same way. And that's when I would say was really when everything started to look up and be just so exciting and adventurous.
Well, I haven't thought about that, but I have to say, if you think you had it hard when you were 22, I was 22 40 years before. Uh,
Yeah.
and let me tell you, it was a little rough going for young women in the business in the beginning. And I know that hasn't always changed very much as it should change. But I like you, one of the things I absolutely love about the wine business is that it is a people business. And it's not only a people business, but it's a business of good and generous people. I mean, what other business is there where someone can't wait to make you happy, to turn you on to something delicious? I mean, it's really, if you think about it, I think it's one of the reasons why so few people kind of drop out of wine. People go into different aspects of it, but usually once you fall in love with it, you're kind of a lifer, you're going to
Oh,
love wine. And as you say, you want to go to yet another country. The number of countries that make wine is larger than ever. It's kind of addictive passion in a way.
I love that. And I love that what you said. It's like no matter what sector you are in the wine industry, we all just want to share the wine. We all just get so excited when you could share a glass in the story. And I think that's such a good point and a reminder that no matter what you're doing in the industry, we all share that. We all want to give and be generous because we just know that's all what wine is about. And you don't go into it for the money. You go into it for the enjoyment and the simple pleasures. So, and the story. I love that.
So, why do you think? I mean, it is springtime. So it's
Yeah.
share and pair Sundays time. I've been sharing a lot of wine and food with friends, and friends of all ages.
Yeah.
I wonder why. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Why is there so much kind of angst about, Gen Z adopting wine when sharing, being with people, having fun with people. Seems like it's categorically good. Who doesn't love that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think is going on kind of
Yeah.
generationally?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic to think about, and I've been thinking about it a lot because, like you, we just want people to enjoy it. We don't care who you are, how old you are, where you're at. Like, we just want you to have it and know about it and be open to it. I think kind of like anything, it's change. And I think it's, people who've been in the industry maybe for a long time, like yourself, might just have a more like this is our world approach, and like you better respect it in these ways. And I think it's more just assumption and judgment, like any industry in the world, right? Looking at the younger demographic and being like, but are they really appreciating it, the way that they should? And just not communicating. I really think it's about that, is being closed off and not communicating with the younger generation. And I could even be honest and say I did a tasting with 22, 23-year olds, and I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, I hope they're not gonna like laugh at me, or like, because it's like you always just I just think it's natural to not be comfortable with, a different age group. So I could only imagine people who've been in it for decades and decades, having maybe more scared, maybe more nervous, just like how I'm also nervous talking about wine with someone like yourself, even, or someone, older and like, more experienced. I think it's all, maybe we have those insecurities. And I think it's just being honest about it. And again, communication, which is easier said than done. So I would say the best way to go about it is never judge someone by any of those factors until you talk to them, get to know them. And as long as they seem like they're open to learning, that's awesome. And that's all we could ever hope for. I think that's literally it, is just sparking that conversation. But there is something, without me going on a tangent, I do want to kind of say the wine industry hasn't, as much as I do feel like, we're making it more accessible, more approachable, all those words. I don't think people are making it as actionable as they're saying they are. And I think that people kind of sense that. And I think, the younger generation might sense that too. And they might even want to separate themselves from a lot of, big name, places and stuff. So I think it's just acting upon how we're wanting to talk about wine and practicing what you preach. If you want to make it fun and accessible, then maybe at the tasting, don't overwhelm someone and describe the wine and all these crazy characteristics and expect them to like be okay. Like, more like be like, I kind of get this. What do you get? Like, I'm gonna go pick up a bag of potato chips. I think this could be really good with that, and not, deminimizing how sophisticated their education is and their training, and how amazing quality their wine, and not dumbing it down, but finding that good in between, that relatability factor. I think anyone could find little things to relate to people about, even if it's like a city you grew up in. And I think it's more, going back to your original thing, it's about the person and getting to know them. And then
Mm, mm,
maybe you could
mm.
start having a bond over the wine. And I think I love connecting with people. I think wine is awesome to connect with, but I love getting to know the person and making them feel comfortable and them feel like safe in our conversation. And then you could kind of move into the education portion. So it's easier said than done. And I think it's just, practicing and not being afraid to kind of get vulnerable.
I love that. And because kind of surrendering to your own not knowingness, your own vulnerability,
Yeah.
um, is in a way it feels good. You don't have to be in control of everything. In fact, one of the things I love about wine is that so much of it remains mysterious. So
Yeah.
much of it we just don't know. And that's what unites us all. I mean, I don't know, why does this wine from this little piece of ground taste like this, and
Yeah.
this wine that is literally a foot away tastes like something
Yeah.
else? it's this giant kaleidoscopic mystery. Um, but I have to say, I mean, you're a sommelier. I'm not. But the other day I was at a tasting, a retrospective tasting of a very famous California winery.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of young somms there. I was one of the only writers and probably the oldest, at least the oldest woman in the room. So, and I'm kind of I was used to being the youngest in the room. But anyway, one somm, we were tasting this one wine, and it was a beautiful wine. It was older. Really, the only thing you could say was, oh my God, you know, that would have done it as a description. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God,
Yeah.
would have covered the whole wine.
Yes.
So anyway, he said, I get, and he went into this massive long list of all of these aromas and flavors, starting with, I will never forget this, potato focaccia.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, whoa, what?
I've heard a lot, but that's a new one.
I know. And the
Did you
wines
just eat
were,
one? You just had
I'm
it.
like, this was a Pinot Noir. I'm like, I'm stuck back here on
Wait, Karen,
cherries,
that's
but
actually really funny.
potato focaccia? Okay. Um,
Not just a potato focaccia.
I'm like, I didn't even know there was potato focaccia.
I've
So
never.
I get it when people, laugh at any of us for kind of outlandish
Yeah.
descriptions. But he was very serious.
I
And
was just gonna, that was gonna be my question.
yeah,
Like, I know that's crazy, but like, that's what I get. But he was just more serious about it.
he was very serious about it. If I was sitting I was sitting across from him, but if I was sitting next to him, I would have kind of teased him a little bit
Yeah.
because I mean, wine is hard to describe, and whatever you get is what you get. That's great. But I think we also have to, turn the binoculars around and have a little humor with ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I think
um,
what he said was totally fine as long as he like after was like he acknowledged how silly that is
right.
and was like, I recently had one.
Yeah.
So
But I thought, what would I do if I was in a restaurant and the sommelier came over and said, I have this excellent Pinot Noir. It tastes like potato focaccia.
oh
I
my
think I
God.
would,
I would have been like,
like,
sold, sir.
so could you bring that with the potato
Yeah, I
focaccia?
was like, that sounds great. Should we pair it? It'd be funny if they're like, no, you wouldn't pair it with that. And like kind of like have a serious face. And we're just like, oh. But that's like such a fun memory and reminder where maybe I'm not trying to get like psychological, but like maybe like he is kind of insecure and like has to put on an
Mm,
extra front of their intelligence and like knowledge. And like I used to be that way. Like when I was in a room full of like older men, like I couldn't take a joke because I didn't know if they were messing with me, if they were like quizzing me. So I had to like stand firm. So I like putting myself in their shoes, like it could have been that, or they just they might just be a little uppity. I don't know, but it's like, yeah, I think that's a really great reminder where that still happens. And as for the consumer, I think as much as we can, just remind them like you're always going to experience different versions of learning about wine and just know that it's silly. It's just
yeah,
silly. Flavor profiles, different words people use, like it's so funny and silly. And I think as long as you could agree if you like it or not, and you could appreciate where it came from, maybe if it was a really old wine and it still tasted like potatoes to you, but you could still be like, this is so cool because I'm drinking such an old wine. I think it's all about appreciation and then kind of like laughing at the silly characteristics. I think it's possible. It's not making fun of the wine, right? I think it's possible to like have this love and appreciation and gratitude, but also be like, yeah, sir, like your potato focaccia is my Pinot Noir red wine.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, you just said something that I love, which is the idea that, and you hear wine people say this all the time, after you've tasted wine with someone a few times, you're like, oh, your cherries are my strawberries.
Yeah.
And because of course it's all metaphor anyway. There's, there aren't cherries in the wine, and there there isn't potato focaccia in the wine either. It's all just our attempt to try and remember a wine by associating it with other things that we know.
Memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you grew up in like a farm, you're definitely going to understand barnyard and like, compost more than someone like me who grew up in a city where I'm like, I don't know, I guess I gotta go lick some hay and smell a stinky barn. Maybe your barnyard's my pumpkin patch growing up, Like, yeah, I think it's all subjective in our memories and our nostalgia. And I kind of love that. I think it's so cool when someone who's never tasted wine, like more like analyzed it, and is just having fun with it, but they get something so kind of spot on that like I would never have gotten, but I'm like, you were wow, like that was great. Like I never would have gotten that. But it's because they just had a gut instinct, And I'm like, that's so cool. I love that. Someone said gooseberry and then a kumquat on a wine, and I've never had either one of those. So it was like I could imagine that maybe my grapefruit is kind of like your version
Mm,
of that.
mm.
And I think that's a really great way to connect and personalize wine tasting notes because then some people are like, but I really want to know what it should taste like. What am I supposed to taste?
Mm,
I get
mm.
asked a lot. They're like, I know I could taste anything and I'm right. I know, Sam, like I get that. But like I kind of actually want to be right, when like they're
Yeah,
wanting that reassurance. So I'm like, I got you, I understand. So then I'll be like, kind of think of it as like a tart, you're getting like that tartness, so am I, same
right.
same thing, as long as we kind of understand that difference between tart versus really rich and jammy, I think we're good. That's that you're good. You're on the right path. And then if you want to
Right.
get crazy and add different terms to it and elaboration, then go for it.
To take this from a different angle, one of the most fun things I think about being in wine is that in a way, I always think it's a little bit like being an athlete because you're practicing your senses
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
Unfortunately, you're not practicing your muscles, but you are practicing your senses.
Still drinking. Yeah, I love
And yeah, and it teaches you to be sensorily aware. What does the room smell like? What does a manila envelope feel like, right? You're constantly practicing this ability to detect sensorial things. So one day I had started the wine program at the CIA, at the Culinary Institute of America. And one day I was walking down the hallway with one of the teachers who I had hired also to teach. He was also a winemaker, and he was walking close to the wall, which was a stone wall, and I was walking on the outside. And I forget the weather, I don't know. We were talking about something inconsequential. And all of a sudden, he turned to the wall and licked it.
it.
And I said, John, did you just lick the wall? And he said, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, why? He said, I'm looking for Cabernet. And I thought, okay. And then we went back to talking about the weather, right? And I thought, I love this guy. This is
I love that
right.
he licked a wall.
It's like,
Mid convo.
he had a kind of, I think of it as almost like having a 2-year-old. 2-year-olds would like eat crayons and
Yes, yeah. It was calling to him. His
smell
like
everything.
senses were like tingling. He was like, it's close. I smell it. I gotta see. I love that. I'm known as I whenever I go to a vineyard, I always lick the terroir. I lick the dirt and the rocks, and because I'm like, I don't want to make it up when I actually get rocks in a wine. Like I want to know what it actually tastes like. So I
Right.
get it. You sometimes got to take it really literal, and I think I love that. I
Yeah.
definitely.
What is your favorite food and wine pairing? Because I've been we've been doing lots of
Yeah.
food and wine pairing this
Yeah.
the last month or so, or 2 months, I guess. But
Yeah.
do you have a favorite?
I think that question, Karen, is like asking like what your favorite wine is, and it's really hard. And
Hard.
I won't pivot the question too much, but I think there's so many distinct memories and
Mm.
like breadcrumbs in my mind of all these different, wine and food pairings I've had, and it all comes down to like who I was with. And where I was at, and I can't even like think of like one spectacular food and wine that just blew my mind. It was more like where I was at and who I was with. But one that I guess comes to my mind really recently is I think that will be a good one, is I was with my mom, and my mom hasn't been feeling well. She has lupus, and so like her food cravings and stuff are kind of all over the place depending on if she's having a good day or not. So it's hard to get her to eat. And I was snacking on Trader Joe's's unexpected cheddar spread. So it's like to me, it kind of reminds me of a really good cheese whiz. I used to use and it was like nostalgic in my mind. I was like, Mom, like, you gotta try this. Like, even though I know you're not hungry, like I think you'll like it. And I was using like Trader Joe's versions of like wheat thins. And so I started eating, and I gave her some, and then I poured some of my wine, my Blanc de Blancs. It's a bubbly, and I think it tastes good. It does, but I think she loves it because it's mine, right? So it's like that sentimental value. So even though like she wasn't feeling well, I like brought it over to her, and before I knew it, she like ate almost the whole container. She was drinking, going through like 2 glasses of the FAF. Like she hasn't been snacking or drinking like that in so long, and we were watching a movie, and it was just a beautiful like moment that I haven't been able to have with her in a long time, and getting to experience like my love for wine with my mom with such a simple snack that when she hasn't eaten like any protein, she's just like loving this cheese dip. That was really beautiful for me, and I think that just that makes me want to try again and again to see if what she's in the mood for on certain days. So I would say that, and it was just a good reminder to, my favorite thing to do ever is simple, unexpected pairings, and remind people it doesn't need to be crazy elaborate or expensive at all. And, of course, everyone wants to take the intimidation out of wine, but I think you really got to break it down to something as simple as something in your cabinet and a wine that you already have that you don't need to go search for and vet
Mm.
out for. And that's what I experience in my personal life, being at my mom's house. I don't know what's in their fridge or what's in their wine cabinet, and just making it work. And yeah, that was definitely gonna stick with me for a while.
Yeah, and it's not just wine and food, it's wine, food, and mood,
Yeah.
right? It's the triangle of those three
I
that
love that. We got to get that on a shirt. Wine, food, and mood.
wine, food, and mood,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
love that.
sometimes mood is the most important one.
Yeah.
How you're feeling, what you're into, because I think when you follow your mood, um, then whatever you're doing begins to have a kind of emotional resonance. And we're not robots. We're not doing this like bite, sip, bite, sip. It has to have, you have to feel it. You have to have that emotional resonance for it, for anything to feel like, yeah, there's no other place I'd rather be in the world right now than sitting on the couch with this dip, these chips, and this wine or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
agree
love
with you.
that. I love that. I couldn't agree more. It's all about the mood for sure. And reminding people too, like, because I get asked reminded me, people are like, do I take a sip? Do I take a
Oh,
bite? What
yeah.
goes first? And obviously certain settings you could break it down for them a certain way, but I'm like, don't be scared just to try a wine with what you're snacking on, even if it's not expert approved. Like if you like it, that's what matters. And you'll be just so pleasantly surprised the more you just kind of play around with it. And I want to share one more with you just because this one blew someone's mind who like did not understand how anyone could have food and wine and it blow their mind. and it was Sour Patch Kids and rosé. And they were like, I finally understand it, Sam. Like that blew my mind. And like now I'll have forever like a client, you know? And that's what I think is a really good reminder to remind everyone too, is just like, you know, maybe you were having some, you know, leftover candy from Halloween, or your kid was eating goldfish and you were drinking the leftover wine in the bottle. Like, you know, like it could be expert approved, but even if it's not, if you enjoyed it, heck yeah, I love that.
Totally right. Well, Samantha, it's great to see you and
Great
wonderful
to
to
see
talk
you.
with you.
Always wonderful to talk
Um,
with you too.
yeah, wonderful to talk with you too. And I know you're very successful, and I wish you continued success because the wine industry, the wine community, we need people who are so wonderfully vocal about their passion. And I always say it reminds me of, the movie When Harry Met Sally, like, I'll have what she's having.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So when you express your passion, that creates a kind of ripple for other people. So thank you for talking today.
Thank you for having me. The mood is contagious, so we just got to keep spreading the excitement and the love. And I so appreciate what you're doing, Karen, and it's making it just so much more accessible for everyone. So you're a legend. Thank you for having me. It was so great to chat with you again.
Wonderful to see you too. All right, Sam, thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.